Pokemon series has been a long-running part of my life. Since I was very young, I followed the adventures of Ash Ketchum from Pallet Town and his partner Pikachu. Through thick and thin, these two stuck together, taking on every challenge that came their way, leaving no challenge behind. From Kanto to Johto all the way to the end, this 10-year-old boy has seen the world and has lived the dream. As a Pokemon fan, I've played every game, watched almost every episode of the main series, and yes, all of the movies as well. And that is exactly what this is about. That's right, I, Celestia, have decided to review the entire Pokemon movie series. That's right, from the first movie to the final one release, I will be watching and reviewing all of them. Of course, I'm not going to do videos where I watch and react in real time. It's mostly me watching the movie and saying my thoughts. It's going to be super fun, hopefully. Each movie will have its own video, but at the end, if everything isn't too long, I might make a supercut of every review for your viewing convenience. I'd make a longer video from the get-go, but I have precious little space on my drive, so I'd rather do them separately and cut them all together later on. I'm not going to stall anymore, so without further ado, let's begin with the first movie. Side note, due to copyright, I'm probably most likely going to stick to using still images instead of clips from the movie. The Pokemon Company is notorious for taking down things that use footage from movies or the anime. An example was another YouTuber by the name of PokeFurlax, who ended up getting several strikes on his channel and almost lost it. I believe it was early last year, and I don't really feel like going through that myself, though. You know how archaic Japanese laws are, so I'll probably use clips whenever possible. But yeah, let's begin with Pokemon, the first movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back. My first memory of this movie was when I was 7 years old. I distinctly remember the day we got it. Me and my family had just moved to the United States, and it felt like an alien world to me. It hadn't been that long since my father had passed away, the one who introduced me to Pokemon in the first place. I recall fond childhood memories of us watching the Indigo League together, but even now those memories are fleeting. I remember seeing Mewtwo on the cover of this movie and being curious about it, and thankfully the video store where we got it from was running a special, where they'd give you a free movie if you bought 3. That's how I got my hands on this movie. It had been a while since I had watched Pokemon, but I did vaguely remember seeing something about Mewtwo. Those who have watched the main series will know that Mewtwo has actually been a recurring character in the anime. Watching it now with context, you can tell that Season 1 of Pokemon was leading to this moment, the moment that it went from Saturday morning cartoon to a box office phenomenon, marking the true rise of Pokemon, not just as a medium, but as a big name in pop culture. The slow rise of Pokemon fever, as it were. The movie opens up in a lab. You see bubbles rising up and images of a Pokemon floating around through the skies. You can hear a voice questioning who they are, what their destiny is. This, of course, is the voice of the main antagonist of the movie, Mewtwo, a being that was created in a lab by humans using the DNA of the rare Pokemon Mew. As it awakens, it is confused, wondering who and what it is. He is told only one thing, that he is the greatest achievement of the experiment conducted, the surviving clone of Mew. It realizes then that the people in this lab see it as nothing more than a lab rat. It unleashes its power and destroys them all in one fell swoop. Soon, it is revealed that it was Team Rocket's leader Giovanni who masterminded Mewtwo's creation. He talks to Mewtwo, assures it that it can help grow its strength. In reality, Giovanni just wanted to use Mewtwo as a tool to further his empire and gain control of the Pokemon world. Through endless Pokemon battles, Mewtwo grows stronger until Giovanni ends his farce, revealing the truth to Mewtwo. You were created by humans to obey humans. Mewtwo snaps and leaves, returning to his birthplace, New Island. It is here where he vows to destroy all those who oppose him, be it human or Pokemon, and in that statement, the words of the scientist rings in my mind. We dreamed of creating the world's strongest Pokemon, and we succeeded. Indeed, they did, and now Mewtwo, confused, hurt, and wondering what his true purpose is, decides to enact his plan. We cut to the intro shortly after, and I gotta say, watching this and seeing the late 90s era CGI is such a nostalgia trip. We tend to forget how important CGI was back in the day, seeing as it's a facet of most productions these days, but this old style has its charms to it. Hearing the bombastic Pokemon theme from the early days, the Pokeball opening and seeing the title card slowly being spelled out, it brings back a lot of early childhood memories for me. And of course, we move on to the proper opening of the movie, our adventures with Ash, Misty, and Brock, taking a break from traveling to enjoy some lunch. This leads to the first of many battles during the movie, and in this battle in particular, we get the teaser of a Johto Pokemon, Donphan. Growing up, I always wondered what Donphan was as a Pokemon, seeing as I had never seen one before. It wasn't until Gen 3, Emerald specifically, that I learned about it and subsequently played Gen 2. Now I understand that this was a small trend that the Pokemon series would begin, show off future Pokemon in the movies to hype up newer regions and such. The battle, of course, ends with the victory for Ash, because of course he is the titular character. And I gotta say, I'm always impressed with how Ash manages to win with uninvolved starters and Pikachu, of course. Indigo League, Ash was truly a rookie, but managed to pull off some incredible wins. Until the League, that is. And that's because Charizard was being a huge Richard. Hearing the classic voice cast also throws me back. Being a fan since season 1, I got used to hearing Veronica Taylor as Ash. It became very iconic, so when it was announced that she'd be leaving along with the rest of the 4 kids voice actors, it was disheartening. And not to knock on his replacement voice actress, Sarah Natasheni. She did a fantastic job, but I just felt like Veronica Taylor really nailed the role. Ash calling out Thunderbolt never felt the same. It took a while to get used to, and now I enjoy both actresses. They did excellent work during the 20+ year run of this anime. I still remember when the Ash series was announced to end and Sarah said she was proud of the last 17 years voicing Ash. That just made me feel way older than I am. We also got to give credit to Rachel Lillis and Eric Stewart as Misty and Brock. They're just as iconic in their roles as Veronica Taylor. They brought these characters to life, so it's nice to hear their voices again. It's been a very long time since I've seen this movie. I did recently find out that Rachel Lillis was diagnosed with cancer, and it is so sad to hear. I wish her all the best. That disease is an awful one, and it's taken a lot of wonderful actors and actresses and people, pretty much, from us. And it's always horrible to hear when people are suffering from this disgusting illness. And as someone who's lost family members to cancer, it's never easy. So I will be sharing her GoFundMe down below. If you can donate anything, please do. One thing I miss about the Pokemon anime is the witty banter Team Rocket has with each other. Jesse, James, and Meowth are as recognizable as the main cast and always have some of the funniest dialogue, especially in the movies. I feel like in later movies, they weren't as impactful, like they were just along for the ride. And yes, in this movie, they are along for the ride, but they felt more genuine to me. It's something I sorely missed, as in later parts of the series, they just became annoying, barring that serious mode horseshit in the black and white anime. They don't talk about the black and white anime. We move on from it. They didn't have an impact on me anymore, so I guess they did pull it off in Kalos, all things considered. I'd also like to talk about the animation for a bit. Sometimes it's hard to go back to late 90s and early 2000s anime because it looks dated. They used different forms of animation back then, so it just doesn't feel right in a sense. But I'm happy to say that the animation of this movie still holds up. Not only is it fluid and pretty to look at, the colors feel so vibrant and alive, especially the scenes with water. Seeing the bubbles rise up, Mew awakening from its slumber and shooting out of the lake, Mewtwo stirring the ocean and forming a rainstorm. It's all just so beautiful to see, and I'm a sucker for water animation, and this movie nailed it perfectly. Ash and the gang have agreed to Mewtwo's challenge and head to the wharf, only to find out all the boats are stuck due to the storm. This is where we also get a bit of lore for the movie. The harbor master tells of an old legend, a storm that would end the world, and in their sorrow, the tears of life brought back those who perished in the storm. As a kid, I didn't really put much thought into this, even when I was a little older and rewatched this movie. I didn't quite care for it. It was just dialogue to me. But now as an adult who consumes lore and needs the layout of the entire world, I appreciate this. This harbor master telling a local legend might seem dumb to all the trainers there, but it is foreshadowing, especially to what would happen later on in the movie. It's such an insignificant little thing, but one that enriches the story a lot. I love these little bits and things like this. She insists that the harbor is closed and that it's too dangerous. At this time, we also learn that this city's Nurse Joy is missing, and of course, Brock looks at the poster and says not only is she cute, but she looks very familiar. I wonder why, Brock. It's not as if all Nurse Joys in the Pokemon world are identical or anything. Certainly isn't that, huh? Whatever the case may be, these trainers want to go to New Island, so they take off. Ash and Co are the only ones who don't have larger water-type Pokemon that they can use, being left behind. But Ash, being Ash, decides he still wants to go to New Island. So they end up employing the services of Vikings. Yes, Vikings in a Pokemon movie. Come on, we all know it's Team Rocket, but watching this part took me back for a bit and made me laugh. Just the thought of modern-day Vikings being in this world is hilarious in and of itself. And we get to this movie's most iconic line.
Strong! 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 Oh, I think I'm gonna have one.
I didn't know Vikings still existed.
They mostly live in Minnesota.
Even as a kid, this line sent me. I'm sure this went through a lot of people's heads, but not mine, at least on other rewatches when I was older. Also, Jesse's earlier comment about having a stroke is hilarious. The humor is good, and it's something missing from later iterations in the series. It gives a lot of charm. Skipping ahead, we see Ash, Misty, and Brock braving the storm, finding themselves in the eye of the hurricane, where New Island sits. Arriving at the pier, Brock notices that the woman from the invitation and the missing Nurse Joy are identical. though that part isn't revealed until a little bit later. We see only 3 other trainers made it through the storm. They're told by the mysterious woman to release their Pokemon from their Pokeballs, that her master's intentions will soon be clear. The group speaks to the other trainers who managed to make it, and we get to see their Pokemon as well. A good selection if I do say so myself. Also, I gotta point out that trainer incorrectly called his Pidgeot a Pidgeotto. This has fucked my mind for the last 20 years. I know it's a dubbing error, but god, that is like one of the things I can never forget about this movie. And yes, there is a Vaporeon, and before you ask, yes, I have heard about Vaporeon. No, I do not care to hear the story. Moving on. Suddenly, the lights go out. Mewtwo descends.
It's about to go down.
Mewtwo's appearance before the group is always so haunting. Here's this giant unknown entity slowly floating down from who knows where, eyes glowing brightly, landing in front of you. A being who claims to be the strongest trainer in the world is actually a Pokemon, capable of creating a hurricane with a few swipes of his finger balls. Mewtwo is imposing. He is a threat. And it always shocks me how brave Ash is towards Mewtwo. This kid has balls bigger than I did at that age, that's for sure. Mewtwo picking up that trainer was scary as a kid. Like, holy shit. Here's this bipedal cat thing who picks up a kid and almost kills him, and deflects a hyper beam with a single swipe of those magnificent finger balls. Like, dude, he doesn't give a single fuck. He was out to kill. He frees Nurse Joy, and he begins his monologue.
You sly dog! You got me monologuing!
He holds no punches and tells it to him just how it is. I also can't help but laugh at Misty calling Mewtwo a bully, as if that's supposed to mean much to him. Meanwhile, Team Rocket gets to see the seedy underbelly of what Mewtwo's cooking. They accidentally start the cloning machine, with Meowth being the first one. We get to see a message from one of the scientists, learning the truth of what Giovanni was planning. He wanted to create clones far stronger than real Pokemon, and boy did they succeed. The one thing that baffles me is how Team Rocket doesn't react to hearing their boss's name. You'd think that they'd have more questions about that, though they never really did say Team Rocket, so I can understand why he wasn't mentioned. We return to Mewtwo saying that humans are a dangerous race, and I gotta give it to you, Chief. You are absolutely right about that. What Mewtwo says here does bring to light something that a lot of people have questioned about this series. Are Pokemon being enslaved? Do they enjoy battling with trainers? Of course, we've gotten answers to these questions before. They enjoy training, battling, growing stronger alongside trusted partners. Pikachu's a great example of this. He is far beyond the strongest Pikachu ever. But try to see it from Mewtwo's perspective here. It is as he said. Humans brought him into this world with no other purpose than to be a slave. Imagine yourself in his pause for a second. Your entire life, your existence has been nothing but you floating in a tube. You wake up, see humans celebrating their achievement. You realize you were created for nothing more than just an experiment, and have no true purpose. You destroy them, only for another human to give you some paltry words, claiming you two were be partners and equals, when he himself just wanted you as a weapon. You get to understand why Mewtwo is rightfully pissed off. Just imagine that. You are nothing, you will be nothing, and your only purpose is to be something that someone else tells you. It's wrong, and it's why Mewtwo behaves the way he does. He doesn't know any better. He reacts this way because his interactions with humans have done this to him. He trusts no one. Perhaps the only beings he sees the most kinship with are the clones that he has created, because they are the same. Beings that are nothing, created to serve no purpose, and yet, things aren't as they seem here. He wishes to create a world where Pokemon can be free without humans. He believes Pokemon trained by trainers are slaves, and yet Pikachu boldly says he's wrong, that he's Ash's friend. Mewtwo claims people in Pokemon can't be friends. And of course, this jackass with the red jacket decides that, after seeing a Gyarados take its own Hyper Beam to the face, wants a piece of the action, sending a Rhyhorn to fight. You know, a Rhyhorn, a Pokemon Mewtwo has fought before. It's a sweep, of course, but it still baffles me how in this instance, this guy just decides to say, fuck it, I'm in, and he tries to battle Mewtwo. I sure as fuck wouldn't do that. I'd be looking for the exit ASAP. Of course, Ash challenges him to a battle as per protocol, and this goes horribly wrong, as you'd assume. Also, seeing Blastoise, Charizard, and Venusaur emerge from those pod things is haunting as shit. They just walk through that membrane like nothing. It's creepy as hell. James is right, I too am scared. And thus, we move on to the main event. Let the Clone Wars begin. Also, may I point out how badass Charizard is in this part? He comes out of his Pokeball, fucking smirks, and without warning, he just launches a flamethrower right at Mewtwo's face. This is why I loved Charizard as a kid, before the oversaturation, before the 2 Mega forms, the unique Gigantamax form, and Leon. We don't talk about Leon. Charizard was a baller, and I enjoyed seeing his peak rude-ass self back in the OG form. He may have been a Richard to Ash during his early days, but man did he grow into a powerhouse. I'm still pissed that he wasn't brought back at the end of Journeys. Imagine Ash's Charizard beating Leon's Pussysard and claiming ultimate victory for all Charizard kind. and then he goes back to Charazific Valley, proposes marriage to Charla, has sweet fire lizard love, and pops out several purebred Charmanders, all of them OG ballers like him. Gotta keep the species going, god damn it. We need to be the best out here. I will say, seeing my boy getting his ass handed to him hurt. Though I am confused as to why Mewtwo claimed Charizard, Brute Root, and Shell Shocker when he already has clones of Charizard, Venusaur, and Blastoise. I guess more DNA is alright to have in your back pocket, but it's in the computer, so why have it? Though it would make sense to take away their Pokemon so they don't fight back, as if they can win against him. Red Jacket guy proved that couldn't happen, and Blue Shirt guy was literally thrown back like a rag doll. The Dark Balls used here are so cool and haunting as well. These black flying Pokeballs with an eye in the middle haunted me as a kid. I hated to imagine what it would be like to be sucked into one of those, and them being able to absorb Pokeballs as well. There's a sort of helplessness in that. No matter what, even in their Pokeballs, your Pokemon aren't safe from Mewtwo. Seeing Pikachu running for his life was sad, and you wanted him to get away. He's always had a dislike of being inside Pokeballs. Imagining him using every bit of strength to get away is scary, especially knowing your friend and partner can do nothing to save you. Yet despite Pikachu's Herculean struggle, he still gets captured, but not without Ash falling with him. Like a true friend, he manages to save Pikachu and the rest of the Pokemon, leading into what becomes one of the most iconic moments in the Pokemon world. Ash walking out of the underground lab surrounded by smoke and accompanied by all the captured Pokemon is badass as fuck. He looks so damn sick coming out of there. He was ready to clap cheeks and take names. Mewtwo's finger balls be damned. He wasn't going to let shit go down that night. The absolute Pokeballs on this kid. It's so hyped to see Ash flip his cap around and throw a punch at Mewtwo, the Pokemon who thus far has proven he is literally a force of nature, creator of strong clones who has shown the ability to throw you like a rag doll, and this kid throws a right hook at this imposing bipedal cat thing. I gotta give him props, man. Credit where it's due. My boy gets saved by Mew at the end, who's just vibing. He's being a cute Pokemon and takes a Shadow Ball to the face. Mew just dodges and giggles, completely unbothered by Mewtwo's attacks. Mew doesn't care about superiority, he's just floating around. You can clearly tell Mew is uninterested, at least until he sends that Shadow Ball back. Mewtwo continues showing off his superior strength, but Mew continues on as if it's a game. And through Meowth, we learn what Mew thinks, that showing off strength and power doesn't mean anything. True strength comes from the heart. Of course, Mewtwo doesn't take kindly to this prattle and begins to fight in earnest. We get to hear another iconic song, Brother, My Brother. God, this brings back so many memories of my childhood. I used to listen to the song a lot, but the meaning of it hits harder here, I think. Especially with the lyrics superimposed over the fighting Pokemon. At this point, they no longer look as clones nor Pokemon. They're just creatures fighting each other. These clones don't understand anything. They fight because they're told to. They're all the same, yet they continue to fight. You don't even get to see who's who anymore, because unlike the starters, the other clones don't have markings on them. So they quite literally look like normal Pokemon. And the fight with Pikachu and his clone, it's so sad seeing it wanting to avoid it. He just doesn't want to fight, but the clone does. This isn't fighting anymore. It's not a friendly competition. It's just a duel to the death. Seeing Pokemon fighting like this, it's sickening. It makes you wonder if what we're doing as trainers is right or wrong, to have them battle for us. For a children's movie, having these sort of philosophical questions is quite bold. I know a lot of this stuff definitely flew over my head as a 7-year-old, but seeing it now as an adult, it does make you think, especially above the overall message of this movie. Fighting is wrong, and yet the basis of this entire world is fighting. And seeing the Pokemon duke it out like this, it makes you want to stop it. You get to see a cruel side of battles that normally isn't seen in the series. Sure, we've seen Pokemon being abused before, told to fight and fight and fight without stopping, even seen Pokemon being killed. But seeing a battle like this, something brutal, it certainly was unexpected. Despite it all, there are two Pokemon who aren't fighting, and that's Meowth and his clone. The profoundness of these two has stuck with me for a long time. There's no reason to fight. They have so much in common, as Meowth pointed out. They have the same earth, the same air, the same sky. The world isn't black and white. There will always be disagreements. It's hard to look at your fellow man and not see bad qualities in him, but there's so much we share in common, far more than the bad. No matter what, there will always be arguments. There will always be fights, and that is a part of life. If we only look at the negatives, we will never see progress. If we looked at what was the same instead of what is different, you'd find you have a lot more in common with them than you give them credit for. It's honestly odd seeing something like this in a kid's movie, and tied to Meowth of all Pokemon. And I think it was a good choice to have him say this. After all, look at him. He taught himself to speak and walk on two legs like a human to impress a female Meowth. He is not a normal Meowth by any stretch of the imagination, and yet here he is, having common ground with his own clone, despite being so different. They have so much more that is the same. I like that. It's a beautiful sentiment, especially here, surrounded by the pain and brutal battling of these Pokemon who fight for the sake of fighting, yet you get to see these two Pokemon find common ground. It contrasts a lot to the main battle with Mew and Mewtwo, but also with the battle of the Pikachus. Ash's Pikachu refuses to fight, and yet his clone continues to slap him because he refuses to see the same thing Meowth and his clone have seen. He fights and fights and gets angry at Ash's Pikachu when he doesn't fight back. It's certainly impactful. Seeing Ash being so distraught gives me chest pains. He wants so desperately for this to end, but it won't. I don't think I'd be able to do much of anything in his shoes, I'd imagine. Seeing my Pokemon fighting it out, powerless to stop them, I'd probably just watch, disheartening as it may seem. He looks up to see all of these Pokemon looking so hurt, and he seems destroyed yet determined to put an end to this. And he does, charging straight into the fray, taking Mewtwo and Mew's attack. We get to hear another powerful piece, Tears of Life. Ash turns to stone, and the Pokemon weep, and I assure you, you weep as well. If there's one moment that has stuck with me throughout the years, even if I don't recall much of the movies, it's this one. Seeing Pikachu shocking Ash, the Pokemon crying, it's too much, honestly. You get to see the tears flowing towards Ash. The legend the Harbor Master spoke of becomes true. The tears of these Pokemon brought Ash back to life. In that instance, it didn't matter that they were clones or not. They all cried the same. And like a miracle, the light of the moon shines over the trainer and he returns to life. And here, Mewtwo finally understands. What is the true meaning of life? That has been the biggest question this movie has posed. Mewtwo has been searching for his purpose. All he has known, all he thinks he knows, is that the scientists created him for absolutely no purpose other than to be an experiment. He is a clone. He was created by humans. Those humans may have been cruel. Giovanni certainly was. But he has a much brighter destiny, one that he didn't think about much in his pursuit of power. He was blinded by rage, and he didn't see what was around him. The true meaning of life doesn't matter. The circumstances of one's birth are irrelevant. It is what you do with the gift of life that determines who you are. Life is a gift, and you shouldn't waste it. Time is finite. Whether you search to etch your name into the throes of history, seek out the next exhilarating adventure, or live a quiet and peaceful life, it doesn't matter. It is, at the end of the day, your choice what you do with it. People do awful things, as Mewtwo did. He pit these Pokemon against each other. It is when we set aside our differences that we see each other for what we are. Just people living the best lives we can. And for a movie like this, I don't think there's a message more powerful than that. What is Mewtwo's true purpose? Well, only he will know that. And thus, we reach the end of this charming movie, being greeted by one of my favorite parts of all the movies, seeing the ending credits as Ash's journey continues. So many good songs, too. All of the ending songs are always good. Also, a massive plot hole. Ash could have just shoved Pikachu in his backpack to stop the Pokeballs from catching him, just like Misty did with Togepi. Just saying, she did that and Mewtwo didn't even notice, despite him being psychic. Oh, we've reached the end. I thoroughly enjoyed watching this movie, and I was reminded a lot of my childhood, and so many emotions came flooding back. Never thought I'd be getting all waxing poetic when discussing a Pokemon movie, but that's the fun of things. Seeing things as an adult that you don't notice as a kid. Especially with Tears of Life. If you listen to the full track, one thing that stands out is the bell that is rung midway through. I remember reading once that this bell is rung during Japanese funerals, the sign of a soul departing, or something along those lines. Hearing this bell, it lets you know that Ash did die. It was a miracle that those tears brought him back to life. It's a moment that has always stuck with me, no matter how long I've spent without watching this movie. And as lovely as this movie is, I unfortunately have to dock points. Why, you ask? Well, because of Mewtwo's origins. This is an intro short to the movie which was played in Japanese theaters. It is a prologue of sorts that details everything from the point of view of the scientists. You not only get to see the birth of Mewtwo, but you get to see Charmander 2, Bulbasaur 2, and Squirtle 2, along with someone else, Amber 2. Amber is the daughter of one of the scientists. She passed away young, and he wanted to perfect the technology to bring her back. Amber was the only friend Mewtwo had. They spent their short lives together chatting and just spending every waking moment with each other. It was a cute little side story. Unfortunately, Amber 2 became unstable, and she, along with the clone starters, ended up fading, leaving Mewtwo as the only successful clone. This is a major driving force behind why Mewtwo does the things he does. He remembers Amber 2, his only friend. He remembers those Pokemon. He's confused, wondering where she has gone, what has happened to her. Seeing those scientists being jovial, that drove him over the edge. The American release of the movie, this section was relegated to bonus content on the disc, meaning if you didn't want to see it, you didn't have to. It isn't like the intro short, Pikachu's Vacation, which begins before the movie. I think this was an error, as leaving Mewtwo's origins in the movie would have definitely made his reasoning a bit more understandable. Watching the movie without this intro, you'd think Mewtwo is just an experiment gone wrong, that he's doing the things he does to prove himself. But watching it with Mewtwo's origin in context, you get to see it for what it is. Mewtwo's a flawed Pokemon, much like humans have flaws. It yearns to find where it belongs in the world, genuinely believes what it is doing is right. That's why at the end, he tells Ash he's going to follow his heart, so that one day he may learn what Ash has learned, to be kinder and a gentler being. Ultimately, I believe this is what Amber 2 would have wanted, for Mewtwo to be happy. Due to this, despite me loving this movie and crying like a baby back bitch, I'm going to have to slide this into the Ultra Ball category. I genuinely believe that if it had Mewtwo's origin as a forward instead of Pikachu's vacation, it would have been way better. And speaking of Pikachu's vacation, watching it apart from Mewtwo Strikes Back, I think it's an okay short. It's kind of meh to me. I do like that we get to see Meryl before Gen 2, though Meryl would become a mainstay Pokemon in the Orange Island arc, so that's kind of a moot point. Pikachu's rivalry with Raichu is great, and I like that all the Pokemon team up to pull Charizard out of the pipe. Ranking it as its own standalone short apart from the main feature, I'm gonna slide it into the Great Ball category, mostly because while I did overall like it, it was mid for me. Not bad, but not good either. As a cute little segment with the Pokemon, it's serviceable compared to the other intro shorts, that is. But yeah, I guess that's the end of the video. I have no idea how long it's gonna be once it's done being edited, but it was a fun one to make. If you liked it, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you wanna, and let me know what your personal rankings are, because it's always unique seeing different rankings for these sorts of things. So be sure to leave your opinions in the comments. Next on the docket is Pokemon 2000. Look forward to it. As always, be kind, be respectful, be courteous, no racism, no politics, and as always, may the stars be with you, and thank you all for watching. See you all soon.